Hi. I'm here representing NCRR, which is actually Nikkei for Civil Rights and Redress, and specifically the September 11th committee. I'm also a teacher, as Tax said, and I wanted to speak as a teacher about some of the lessons that we learned from the camps and also from fighting for redress. And students are here from Central High School, the students that I teach with Tony Osumi back there, so I wanted to recognize them. And we're down in Los Angeles, and they came up today. I also wanted to say that there are a lot of people from NCRR here, and I wanted to say that it's an all-volunteer organization. Most of us have regular jobs and volunteer our time, for the past 20 years or so, working on redress and other civil rights issues. So, as a teacher, I wanted to speak about some of the lessons. In 1988, this government apologized and said they were sorry for having put Japanese Americans into camps. And they paid money, $20,000 to each individual, who was put into places like Manzanar and whose rights were taken away. But this didn't happen by magic, nor did it happen by the kindness of the president or of Congress. But it came after 10 long years of struggle by the Japanese American community. During the struggle to win redress, we learned many things. We heard more stories from our community about the camps. We learned also that railroad workers in Nevada and Arizona were fired from their jobs right after Pearl Harbor and were thrown out of their housing and left to fend for themselves. We also heard about families and children being returned to Japan to be exchange hostages for prisoners of war in Japan. We also heard about the Japanese Latin Americans who were brought up here kidnapped, brought up here and put into camps in Crystal City, Texas, and then told to leave after the war and considered illegal. We also heard about people that challenged the evacuation and the curfew and resisted the draft, as you just heard Joe Yamakita talk about. We learned about communities during this campaign who are also facing discrimination, like fighting against English-only laws or other immigration laws against the undocumented that we thought were unfair. We understood that apartheid in South Africa was the same thing. Forced removal of the African people to the Badlands was the same as putting Japanese into camps in these Badlands. We identified with Koreans in Japan who hid their identity because they were ashamed of who they were and didn't even find out they were Koreans until they had to be fingerprinted when they were 16 years old. We supported their struggle to end the fingerprinting of Koreans in Japan. We also learned that it takes sometimes a very long time to win justice, but that it's worth fighting for. We wrote letters, went to Washington, D.C., passed out flyers, had programs to educate people about the camps, rallied and marched when we needed to. And finally, when we won, we celebrated, because we believed that by winning redress, we would ensure that the camps would never happen again. And we thought that our government leaders had also learned a lesson, because they had admitted a mistake and apologized and paid money. We thought that they had actually understood that they failed in their leadership of this country and that they had allowed the hysteria of war and race prejudice to guide what they decided. But did they really learn that lesson? If we're looking at what's happening today, we kind of wonder about that. Immediately after September 11th, Muslims and Arab Americans were rounded up and held without charges, trials, or representation by lawyers. Somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000. We don't even know the numbers because their names were not disclosed and they couldn't even make calls. And some were deported due to minor visa violations. Right after Pearl Harbor, the FBI rounded up over 700 Issei, first generation, and within 48 hours, almost 1,300 had been rounded up and taken away. Japanese were targeted and attacked by the media and called different names and were victims of hate crimes, just as Muslims, Arabs, South Asians, and Sikhs are today, simply because of race and religion. And today, Congressman Howard Coble of North Carolina has stated, even today in 2003, that the camps were for our own protection and that they were justified. Did he learn the lesson of redress? It is up to people like yourselves who are here today and to people like Japanese Americans who experience the loss of their rights to teach our government again these lessons. It is up to us to write those letters to Congress to call for the removal of Congressman Coble from his position as chair of a very important subcommittee on crime, homeland security, and terrorism. It is up to us to try to repeal the Patriot Act, which is again taking away some of our civil rights, allowing the government to search our computers and to again hold people without charges with secret charges and information. It is up to us to support Muslims, Arabs, and South Asians today. Japanese were alone in 1942 except for the Quakers, and we understood the fear that Muslims, Arabs, and South Asians were feeling right after September 11th. So NCRR formed the NCR September 11th Committee to help build understanding and support for those communities. We held Break the Fast programs during the holy month of Ramadan, shared our foods and talked about Buddhism and Islam, and tried to understand each other. We've gotten to know each other as people over the past 2 years, almost 2 years, putting on educational programs, having picnics, and helping to monitor the actions of the Immigration Naturalization Service, which is again conducting special registration for men over 16 from mostly Arab and Muslim countries. Now, you don't have to be Japanese Americans to stand up for what's right. Ralph Lazo was a high school teenager, Mexican American, from Belmont High School, who saw his Japanese friends being taken away to camps and decided to go with them because they were his friends and because he believed that the camps were wrong. Hopefully, we don't have to do that again, or you don't have to do that again. We can write letters to Congress. You can join some peace and justice vigils in different communities. You can learn more about Muslims and Arabs and get to know them. You can visit a mosque and learn about Islam, which is the fastest growing religion in the world. You could join some of us on May 31st, where we're having the first Pan-Asian Peace and Justice Festival in Los Angeles. And there's a flyer on the table about that in Echo Park on May 31st, part of Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. You can also support some of us that have worked on the film, and some people are here, about Ralph Lazo, so that his story can be told to schools and to students, and they can learn that people can stand up, even if they're not Japanese American, even if it's not them facing that discrimination. There are people here that tonight I think are going to see a trailer of a film about Ralph Lazo called Stand Up for Justice, and we hope that you support the film because it still needs to be made and we still need to raise some more money. So there are lots of things that you can do just as individuals. And coming here to Manzanar, we are learning the lessons. You may already know these lessons, but all of this needs to be brought back to people that are out there, talked about more, and people need to take some action. So please go back, talk to your students, talk to your friends, support in whatever way you can, individually, small things, write letters. There are lots of things that you can do. And on the table you find information, and you can talk to any NCR person that's here, and there's several of us here. So thank you very much.
Let's hear it for Kathy one more time.
Thank you, Kathy.